Imagine, if you will, a galaxy brimming with powerful species, some with technology beyond our wildest dreams, others with armies that could wipe entire planets off the map in an instant. These civilizations, large and small, have conquered worlds, enslaved species, and ruled the stars for countless millennia. And yet in all their glory, there's one species they've never feared. One that they've long believed to be nothing more than a myth, a legend from an ancient time. Humans. For centuries, humanity's story has been passed around the galaxy, like a ghost story told in hushed whispers. There were once tales, stories from distant planets, of humans who waged war on the gods themselves, of fierce warriors who could fight through anything and overcome every obstacle. But those were just stories, weren't they? How could a species so small and so fragile stand up to the titans of the universe? How could they ever be more than just a shadow of ancient history? Well, the galaxy was about to find out. You see, the civilizations that rule the stars have their own rules, their own histories, and their own ideas of what's possible. They believed that humans were nothing more than a fading myth, a species that had been wiped out long ago. But what if that wasn't the case? What if humanity wasn't just a story? What if the legends were true? And what if, after all this time, those legends decided to show up again? The galaxy had long forgotten the true might of humanity. To them, we were nothing more than an echo. Until one day, their fleet arrived. And suddenly, the legend of humans wasn't just a story anymore. It was a warning. In the vast reaches of the galaxy, there are countless civilizations, each with its own history, its own mythologies, and its own way of understanding the universe. Most of these species, whether ancient or modern, were founded on the belief that they were the apex of creation. To them, the universe was theirs to rule, to explore, and to conquer. Each species, in its own way, believed they were the final authority in the stars. But then there were the stories that had been passed from one civilization to the next, stories of a species that defied everything. The humans. Many, many eons ago, humans had left their homeworld, Earth, and ventured into the cosmos. They were a young species compared to many of the others, yet in their short time, they had accomplished feats that no one else could replicate. Their ingenuity, their resilience, and their ability to adapt to any challenge made them a force to be reckoned with. But as the centuries passed, the galaxy had forgotten the true extent of humanity's capabilities. Over time, humanity faded from the annals of galactic history. It was said that they were wiped out, lost to the universe, their tales little more than whispers in the dark corners of space. And yet, some species still remembered. There were races who had encountered humans and lived to tell the tale, though their accounts had become more like myth than fact. The stories said that humanity had once fought against gods, against superior forces far beyond their own power, and had emerged victorious. But to the rest of the galaxy, these stories were nothing more than fables, distorted over time. Some claimed that humans had never existed at all, that they were simply a myth designed to explain the impossible. It was an easy thing to believe. After all, why would a species so small, so seemingly insignificant, be capable of conquering the universe? But as these stories passed from one civilization to the next, they evolved. The legend of humanity became less about what was real and more about what was possible, and as each race told its version, the legend grew. A species of fierce warriors whose very name sent a shiver down the spines of even the most powerful beings in the galaxy. These humans had taken down entire fleets, they had toppled empires, and they had left a trail of destruction wherever they went. No one knew if it was true or just an exaggerated tale. By the time the aliens arrived to investigate, They had no reason to believe the stories. To them, humans were just a myth, a race that had been forgotten. They laughed at the thought of such a species ever challenging them. They were too powerful, too advanced, too invincible. The aliens believed their reputation alone would be enough to erase any doubts about their dominance. They thought humanity was nothing but a faint echo in the vast expanse of the stars. And so, they came to Earth, expecting to find a world of ruins, a race of creatures who had long been wiped from the history books. The aliens were about to learn the hard way that humanity was no myth, and they were far from the weak species they imagined. The alien fleet across the galaxy, there was one species that commanded the most respect, even fear: the Varkari. A race of tall, imposing beings with advanced technology far beyond anything humans could have ever imagined. Their ships were vast, their weapons powerful enough to obliterate entire cities with a single strike, and their empire stretched across dozens of star systems. The Varkari had conquered and subjugated countless species, establishing their dominance wherever they went. The Varkari were not merciful conquerors. They didn't simply destroy. They enslaved, they ruled with an iron fist, and they demanded unwavering obedience from every world they claimed. Their fleet was the most formidable in the galaxy, a relentless force that crushed any opposition in its path. And in the Varkari culture there was one core belief that every member of their species shared. Nothing in the galaxy could challenge them. They had never encountered an enemy they couldn't defeat. But as the Varkari's empire grew, so did their curiosity. There were whispers, legends if you will, of a species that had once existed in the distant past, a species that had fought and won impossible battles against the gods themselves. The humans. The Varkari had heard these tales, passed down from older civilizations they had conquered. At first they scoffed at the idea. They believed the humans were nothing more than a myth, a story to explain away the unexplainable. How could such a primitive species have possibly defeated gods, or survived against overwhelming odds? The Varkari, with all their power, had no reason to believe in the legend. But as time passed, curiosity turned to concern. The stories of the humans wouldn't go away. And the Varkari, ever cautious, began to wonder, what if the humans were real? So the Varkari sent their fleet, not to conquer, but to investigate, to prove once and for all that the humans were nothing more than a distant, forgotten species, their power a mere illusion. They would come to Earth, survey the planet, and crush any remnants of humanity if they existed at all. The Varkari fleet was a sight to behold. Dozens of massive warships, each one larger than any human ship could ever dream of, moved through space with calculated precision. Their hulls glistened in the distant starlight, reflecting the quiet beauty of the void as they neared Earth. The fleet was so vast that it seemed to fill the sky, its shadow casting an eerie darkness over the planet below. At the front of the fleet, the flagship, Sirathis, a ship larger than any city, adorned with dark metallic spires, led the charge. Its engines hummed with quiet power, a symbol of the Varkari's might and technological supremacy. The flagship was commanded by General Varnak, a ruthless leader known throughout the galaxy for his strategic genius and unmatched cruelty in battle. He had spent years studying the ancient stories of the humans, and in his mind he had already decided their fate. The legends would remain just that, no more than forgotten myths. As the fleet neared Earth, the Varkari prepared for what they assumed would be an easy conquest. They didn't expect resistance. They didn't expect humanity to even put up a fight. The planet, after all, was a backwater world, a species long thought extinct. The Varkari, with their advanced weapons and impenetrable shields, knew they were far superior in every way. Earth in their eyes was nothing more than a curiosity, a faint, dim memory from a distant past. And yet, even as they neared the planet, something in the back of General Varnak's mind nagged at him. Something about the stories didn't sit right with him. His instinct, honed from years of leading the Varkari fleet, told him that humanity was something more than the legends, but it was too late for second guesses now. The fleet had already arrived. The first contact, expectations versus reality. The Varkari fleet entered Earth's atmosphere with minimal interference. Their ships cut through space with terrifying precision, making their presence felt across the planet. There were no signs of resistance, no immediate threats from Earth's defenses. The Varkari ships deployed their landing crafts, sleek and dark, touching down on the surface of Earth like silent predators. General Varnak stood on the command bridge of Zirathus, watching Earth slowly grow larger in the viewports. The planet was a blue-green marble, vibrant and alive, but to him it was just another world to be subdued, just another insignificant speck in the universe. As the fleet began to make its descent, the general allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. This would be quick, he thought. No need for any grand tactics or overwhelming firepower. The humans were nothing more than an ancient myth, their power a figment of other civilizations' imaginations. They had built nothing of importance. Their technology was primitive compared to the Varkaris. Surely they would not dare to fight. We shall send a message to their leaders, Varnak said, his voice cold, calm, and confident. Let them know we are here. Let them see what happens to those who dare challenge the might of the Varkari. A communications officer entered the command center. General, we've established contact with their leaders. They are requesting a dialogue. Varnak raised an eyebrow, surprised. For a moment it seemed almost trivial. These humans, who were supposed to have been erased from history, were asking to speak with him. He had expected them to cower, to beg for mercy. He hadn't anticipated a response at all. Put them through, Varnak ordered, his voice dripping with condescension. The image on the screen flickered for a moment before stabilizing. There, standing in front of the Varkari general, was a human diplomat. Her expression was calm, composed, but there was something in her eyes, a quiet, unyielding confidence. General Varnak didn't know what to make of it. This was the leader of the humans. She seemed so ordinary. But then again, appearances had never mattered to the Varkari. It was strength, power, and superiority that mattered. The diplomat spoke, first her voice clear and firm. I am Ambassador Clara Mendez of the United Earth Federation. Welcome to Earth. Varnak couldn't help but chuckle softly. Welcome? He leaned forward in his chair, his voice dripping with disdain. You should be begging for your lives, Ambassador. You should be kneeling before the might of the Varkari. You are nothing more than a legend, a myth. I do not believe you even deserve the title of people. You will submit to us, or we will eradicate you. The diplomat's eyes remained, fixed on Varnak's image, unblinking, unwavering. You're mistaken, she said calmly, a small, knowing smile curling at the corners of her mouth. We are not the legends you think we are. We are real, and we are capable of far more than you understand. For a moment Varnak's confidence faltered. There was something unsettling in her tone, something he hadn't expected. He was used to beings cowering before the Varkari, trembling in fear at their vast power. But this human, this ambassador, did not seem afraid. She seemed prepared. What do you mean? Varnak's voice was colder now. His interest peaked. The diplomat's smile faded and her voice became more serious. We've been waiting for this day. We knew you would come eventually. And when you did, we would be ready. We are not the weak ancient species you think we are. And when you step foot on our planet, you will see that your legends about us are far from the truth." Varnak's jaw clenched. He had expected the usual mixture of fear, desperation, and plea for mercy. But this was different. The humans weren't begging. They weren't intimidated. In fact, they were speaking as though they were in control, as though they were the ones holding all the cards. It unsettled him more than he cared to admit. "Do you really believe you can stand against us?" Varnak asked, though now his voice carried a hint of uncertainty. "We'll see soon enough, General." Ambassador Mendez replied, her voice unyielding. "You'll see exactly what humanity is capable of." The transmission ended. Varnak sat in stunned silence for a moment, processing what had just transpired. He had expected fear, perhaps a plea for mercy, but instead he had been met with an unshakable confidence, a warning, a promise. The human ambassador hadn't begged for mercy. She had dared him to try. "Prepare the fleet," Varnak muttered. To his officers, his voice now filled with a quiet rage. "This will not be as easy as we thought, but we will crush them. No one, not even a legend, can stand against the might of the Varkari. The battle begins." Humans showed their true strength. The silence after the transmission hung heavily in the air, thick with the uncertainty that General Varnak tried to ignore. His fleet had reached Earth, and still, no sign of fear, no hint of surrender from the humans. Instead, the diplomat's words lingered in his mind. "We are not the weak, ancient species you think we are." He had assumed that this mission would be quick, that their reputation alone would strike fear into the hearts of the humans. But now, as his fleet prepared for the invasion, something gnawed at him. What if the legends weren't just stories? What if humanity had truly evolved into something far more formidable than anyone had ever expected? Still, the Varkari were determined. Their technology, their sheer might, had never been challenged before. They could obliterate any world in an instant. Earth would be no different. They began to deploy their ships into Earth's atmosphere, sending waves of warriors to secure key locations and neutralize any potential resistance. And yet, when they arrived, Earth greeted them not with trembling civilians, but with unexpected preparedness. No sooner had the first Varkari forces made landfall than they encountered an organized and surprisingly sophisticated defense. At first, it was just a handful of human fighters, small, nimble ships darting through the Varkari formations, like wasps attacking a much larger creature. Their tactics were fast, relentless, and seemingly random, making it impossible for the Varkari to pin them down. Human ingenuity, they would soon realize, was their greatest weapon. Varnak watched from Zirathis, his flagship, as the first shots were exchanged. "What are they doing?" he asked his tactical officer, his voice now a mixture of confusion and irritation. "They're fighting back, General," the officer responded, clearly as taken aback as Varnak himself. "Small ships, unremarkable in design, but they're fast. They're unpredictable. We didn't expect this." The Varkari had relied on overwhelming firepower, but the humans didn't play by the same rules. Instead of standing their ground and engaging directly in large-scale battles, the humans used guerrilla tactics, attacking in sudden bursts, retreating before the Varkari had time to react, and then striking again. The humans were everywhere, behind enemy lines, inside the Varkari ships, disrupting communications and wreaking havoc with their unorthodox strategies. "What are these humans?" Varnak muttered, his grip tightening on the armrests of his command chair. This was not the species he had expected, the ones from the stories, the ones that supposedly disappeared long ago, weren't supposed to have this kind of strength. They were supposed to be weak, pathetic relics of an ancient time. Yet here they were, facing the full might of the Varkari fleet and fighting back with the fury of a species that had been underestimated for far too long. At that moment, a deep rumble echoed through Zerathis as the flagship was hit by a sudden, sharp strike from one of Earth's secret weapons. Varnak's eyes widened as alarms blared across the bridge. "What was that?" he barked. "General," the communications officer stammered. "We've been hit with an electromagnetic pulse. All systems are going offline, we're losing power." The attack came without warning. A pulse so strong that it momentarily disabled the Varkari ship's most advanced systems, slammed into the fleet. It was not a weapon the Varkari had expected from humanity. It wasn't a laser, a missile, or any kind of traditional weapon. No, this was something far more subtle. A calculated strike against their technology, a direct assault on their very ability to fight. The Varkari fleet had always relied on technological superiority, but the humans had anticipated this weakness. They had been secretly building weapons that could disrupt, disable, and even turn the Varkari's own machines against them. Their first strike had been successful, and for a brief moment, the fleet was left in chaos. Varnak, furious, but still composed, slammed his fist against the console. "Recover now. Regain control." His order rang out through the ship. "They cannot defeat us with tricks. We will crush them." Despite the setback, the Varkari fleet quickly recovered, and they retaliated with their full might. A massive wave of missiles launched from their ships, each one more destructive than the last, raining down on Earth's defenses. The humans, however, weren't cowed. They had expected this. Earth's military defenses, once considered outdated by the galaxy's standards, had been hidden from the Varkari's prying eyes. A combination of underground bases, advanced aircraft, and highly skilled soldiers made sure that every attack had a cost for the Varkari. The humans weren't just fighting back with technology. They were fighting with heart. Each battle, no matter how small, was fought like it was their last. And with every passing minute, the Varkari realized that the humans weren't just defending themselves. They were fighting for something much greater: their survival, their world, their future. Despite their superior firepower, the Varkari couldn't seem to gain the upper hand. The more they pressed, the more the humans adapted. Their fleet might have been massive, but the human forces were nimble, determined, and unpredictable. Earth's defenses were proving more resilient than the Varkari had ever imagined. Varnak, sitting in his command chair, watched in disbelief as human fighter craft zoomed through the battlefield with precision, their attacks finding weak spots in the Varkari ships. They had something that the Varkari had never seen before, not just advanced technology, but a spirit that refused to be broken. The battle was far from over, but the first wave of the Varkari invasion had already begun to falter. The humans, once thought to be mere legends, had proven themselves to be far more than that. They were not myths. They were real, and they were more than capable of defending their world. Humanity strikes back. The initial shock of the Varkari invasion had passed. The first wave of battles had tested humanity's defenses, but now it was clear that humanity was no longer just holding their ground. They were fighting back with purpose, striking where the Varkari least expected it. Every attack, every resistance effort was a calculated move. The humans were learning fast, adapting even faster. Their ability to think, innovate, and outmaneuver their enemy was beginning to turn the tide of battle. General Varnak's confidence was beginning to erode. Despite the overwhelming power of his fleet, the humans were proving to be an unpredictable, relentless foe. For every blow the Varkari landed, the humans returned too. Their small, agile ships darted through the Varkari formations like shadows, slipping through gaps in their defenses and launching surprise attacks on key targets. Human tactics were not based on brute force. They were based on precision, timing, and knowledge of their enemy's weaknesses, and the Varkari were starting to realize that they had underestimated humanity. Varnak watched, furious and frustrated, as his tactical officers scrambled to regain control of the situation. "How are they doing this?" he snapped. "We've got them surrounded. Why aren't they falling?" "Their tactics, General," a young officer said, his voice shaky but determined. "They're not fighting the way we expected. Their ships are too fast, too unpredictable. They're striking from every angle, targeting weak points. We've never faced an enemy that uses such guerrilla tactics." "Guerrilla tactics?" Varnak muttered under his breath. "The humans should have no idea how to fight like this. They're a primitive species. How can they—" His words trailed off as the realization began to hit him. These humans were not as primitive as they thought. They had been watching, learning, adapting in ways the Varkari had never anticipated. As the battle raged on, one particularly skilled human pilot, known only by their call sign Shadow, became a symbol of humanity's defiance. Shadow's ship was a sleek modified craft, equipped with advanced technology that the Varkari couldn't even identify. It moved through the battlefield with an almost supernatural agility, evading every Varkari missile, every energy blast. It was like a ghost in the machine, striking when least expected, vanishing before the enemy could respond. Shadow's actions were not random. Every move was calculated, every strike precise, every hit designed to disable Varkari weapons systems, disrupt their energy grids, and destabilize their forces. It was a tactic the Varkari had never encountered, not because of the technology, but because of the human mind behind it. The Varkari had focused too much on raw power, assuming that they could overwhelm the humans with force. But it wasn't force that the humans had relied on. It was their ability to adapt, to learn, and to outthink their enemy. As Zirathis, the Varkari flagship, continued to lead the fleet, Varnak received reports from his officers. The humans had targeted one of the fleet's key communication relays, cutting off critical lines of communication between the ships. Then they took out a fleet command center, leaving Varkari commanders stranded, unable to coordinate their next move. The Varkari were in disarray. "I don't understand it," Varnak shouted, pacing across the bridge. "How are they able to coordinate such precise strikes with so few resources? They should be crumbling under our power." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Drake, hesitated before speaking. Perhaps they've been preparing for this. Perhaps they have more knowledge of us than we think." That hit Varnak like a hammer. The humans had always been underestimated, dismissed as legends, as little more than a fading story. But if the humans had truly prepared for the day they would face the Varkari, if they had spent years or even centuries gathering knowledge, resources, and allies, then the Varkari were dealing with something much greater than they had anticipated. General Varnak clenched his fists. The humans were no longer just a threat. They were a challenge. An enemy that had the will, the intelligence, and the determination to push back, to take on the seemingly unbeatable. It was time to take things to the next level. As the Varkari regrouped, Varnak ordered a full-scale assault on the human capital, thinking that a decisive blow could end this insurrection once and for all. But humanity wasn't waiting for their final attack. The humans had already anticipated it, had already set a trap. Just as the Varkari ships approached Earth's major cities, they were hit by a new weapon, one the humans had been developing in secret. A series of satellites, hidden in orbit for years, activated and launched powerful ion cannons that disabled the Varkari's ability to control their ships. The ion pulse surged through the Varkari fleet, disabling their weapons and shields, rendering them vulnerable. Varnak's face turned pale as his command systems failed one by one. "No, no!" he shouted. His fleet, the mightiest in the galaxy, was being destroyed by technology he had never even known existed. The humans had prepared for this battle not with weapons, but with strategy and foresight. They had turned the tables, and now the Varkari were at the mercy of the very species they had thought to wipe out. The battle was turning. The tide was shifting. The humans had proven that legends were not just stories. They were warnings. The final push, the last stand. The Varkari fleet, once so invincible, now found itself faltering. The massive warships designed to dominate the galaxy were rendered nearly powerless against the very humans they had underestimated. As the humans' surprise attacks kept landing, the Varkari were forced to fall back, regrouping and trying to regain control of their shattered command. But General Varnak knew, deep down, that time was running out. The humans were relentless, and their tactics were beginning to exploit every weakness the Varkari had. The once unshakable confidence in Varnak's mind had now been replaced by a simmering anger and dread. His fleet was disorganized, communication was failing, and the last of their powerful weapons were being disabled by the human-made ion pulse. With each strike, the humans were proving that their power didn't come from just weapons or technology. It came from their unity and unyielding resolve. They had become a force that the Varkari had never seen before, one that couldn't be easily crushed. "We can't keep this up," Varnak muttered to himself as he stared out of the viewport, watching the chaos unfold below. How did we miss this? He couldn't afford to lose, not like this. His people had conquered worlds, brought down empires, and turned entire civilizations into dust. Yet now, standing on the edge of defeat, he realized he was staring at the one thing that had always eluded the Varkari, a species willing to fight for their survival no matter the cost. Desperation set in. He ordered his fleet to prepare for one final massive assault on Earth's remaining strongholds, even though the chances of success were slim. His arrogance, however, had clouded his judgment, and now he was making his final move out of pride, not strategy. "What is left of your resistance, humans?" Varnak sent through the comms, his voice cold and calculating. "We will obliterate your world, and your so-called legends will be nothing more than dust." But this time, the humans didn't flinch. The voice that answered Varnak wasn't one of desperation or fear. It was the voice of Ambassador Clara Mendez, calm and certain, unwavering in its resolve. "We've known this day would come, General," she said, her voice echoing with a quiet strength. "We've waited for it, and we're ready. Your fleet will fall just as your arrogance did. Prepare yourself for the truth. The legends are real." Varnak sneered. "We shall see, Ambassador. This war ends now." As the Varkari fleet surged toward Earth for the final push, a new wave of humanity's weaponry took center stage. Humans had planned for this day with a foresight that Varnak had never considered. Hidden deep beneath Earth's surface were enormous launch bays filled with advanced human warships, weapons, and countermeasures that the Varkari had never detected. The true scale of humanity's strength became apparent in the final moments of the battle. As the Varkari charged toward Earth's cities, they were met not with a desperate defense but with an overwhelming counterattack. Out of the depths of Earth's atmosphere, a new fleet emerged, larger and more advanced than any the Varkari had encountered. Humanity had kept their full capabilities hidden, waiting for the perfect moment. The massive human ships, designed for deep space warfare, launched with incredible speed and precision, cutting through the Varkari ranks like a blade through paper. Their weapons, once thought to be primitive by galactic standards, now proved to be devastatingly effective against the alien fleet. Each strike found its mark, disabling key systems, cracking open Varkari ships, and turning their overwhelming power into a weakness. In the heart of the battle, Shadow, the human pilot who had been a symbol of humanity's defiance, led the charge against Zirathis, the Varkari flagship. The battle between them was fierce, a clash of tactics, technology, and willpower. Shadow's ship weaved through the chaos, evading the Varkari's most advanced weapons, striking with the precision of a surgeon. Every hit landed with brutal force, weakening the flagship's defenses, pushing it closer to the edge. Varnak watched in disbelief as his flagship began to lose power, his once dominant fleet crumbling beneath the weight of human ingenuity. He tried to rally his forces, but it was too late. The humans weren't just defending, they were fighting back with every ounce of strength they had, exploiting every advantage, adapting with every move. "This can't be happening," Varnak whispered, as Zirathis shook violently, its systems failing. "They're not legends, they're real, and we've lost." As the final Varkari warship fell, the skies above Earth grew silent. The once proud Varkari fleet was nothing more than debris scattered across the cosmos. Earth had been defended, not through sheer force or power, but through intelligence, resilience, and a fierce desire to survive. The legend of humanity had not only been proven true, it had been sealed in the ashes of the Varkari's defeat. The battle was over, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy had just begun. General Varnak's arrogance had cost him everything, and humanity had emerged victorious. A new era begins. The dust of battle settled slowly across Earth, the once turbulent skies now quiet and still. The final echoes of explosions faded into the vastness of space, leaving nothing behind but the remnants of what had been. The Varkari fleet, once the most powerful force in the galaxy, lay shattered and broken. Their ships, once unstoppable, now drifted through space as wreckage, floating symbols of a civilization that had thought itself invincible until it faced the reality of humanity's strength. The human victory was beyond comprehension. Those who had been skeptical, who had laughed at the very idea of humans being a threat, were now left to grapple with the fallout. The galaxy had witnessed something unprecedented. A small, once forgotten species had taken on the mightiest empire the universe had ever known, and emerged victorious. Back on Earth, celebrations were subdued but meaningful. There were no grand parades, no fireworks in the streets. The fight had been hard and the cost had been high. Many had sacrificed their lives to ensure humanity's survival. Families mourned their losses, but they also took a deep breath, knowing they had accomplished the unimaginable. The human race had not only survived, but had proven that legends were not just stories. They were warnings. General Varnak, who had once sat at the helm of the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, was gone, his name now a footnote in history. The Varkari forces had retreated, but it was clear they were too broken to recover. Their fleet had been decimated, their leadership destroyed, and their once unshakable confidence turned to dust. The humans had not just defeated them in battle, they had obliterated the Varkari's myth of invincibility. Yet, as Earth stood victorious, the humans knew that this was just the beginning. They had proven themselves to the galaxy, but in doing so, they had also opened themselves to new challenges. The Varkari had been a massive threat, but they were not the only force in the universe. The balance of power had shifted, and many eyes across the galaxy now turned toward Earth, unsure whether to fear this newly awakened species or try to forge alliances. On Earth's military base, Ambassador Clara Mendez, who had been the first to communicate with the Varkari, stood alongside Earth's leaders as they gazed at the horizon. What now? one of the generals asked, his voice tired but hopeful. "We rebuild," Ambassador Mendez replied, her voice steady and resolute. "We prepare for what's next. We've shown the galaxy that we are not to be underestimated. We are no longer a legend. We are humanity, and we will stand tall." As the days passed, Earth's leaders began to meet with representatives from other galactic species, some cautious and others eager to extend the olive branch. Humanity's reputation had changed overnight, and while many species feared Earth's power, they knew that humanity's actions had demonstrated one undeniable truth: the human spirit could never be broken. The same resilience that had driven them to win the battle against the Varkari would drive them forward into this new era. Humanity's first step was one of unity. Across the globe, the peoples of Earth came together to rebuild what had been damaged, to honor those who had fallen, and to look toward a future where they would no longer be a myth. They would be a force for peace, exploration, and strength in the galaxy. Humanity now stood at the threshold of something greater. They had fought for their survival, and they had proven their worth. But as Earth began to heal, humanity understood that their role in the galaxy was just beginning. They were no longer an afterthought, no longer a species lost to the past. They were a force in the present, and whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would face them head-on. "We've shown them that we are real," Ambassador Mendez said, looking up at the stars. "Now it's time to show them what we can do, the lasting legacy." As the years passed, the galaxy would remember that fateful day when the Varkari, once the most feared empire in the universe, were toppled by a species they had long dismissed as mere myth. The human victory over the Varkari was not just a victory of technology or firepower. It was a victory of the human spirit, of resilience, of the unyielding belief that no matter how impossible the odds, humanity could overcome them. For Earth, the victory had come at a high cost. The scars of war remained, cities rebuilt, families mourning lost loved ones, and military forces forever changed by the intensity of the battles fought. But in the heart of every human, a new pride took root. They were no longer a forgotten species. They were a force to be reckoned with, a species whose stories would no longer be confined to whispers in the dark. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's strength, and now, every species knew that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. With the Varkari fleet in ruins, the galaxy entered a new era, one where humanity would no longer hide in the shadows of its own history. The human race, once thought to be lost to the ages, had returned not just to survive but to thrive. And as the dust of war settled, Earth and its people turned their eyes to the stars once more. There were still challenges ahead. There were still enemies to face. But humanity had proven, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it would never be underestimated again. And so, as the humans gazed at the stars, no longer filled with fear but with hope, one question remained on their minds: what will we do next? The answer was clear. They would continue to grow. They would continue to fight. They would explore the unknown with the same courage that had brought them through their darkest hour. They would meet new species, forge alliances, and when necessary, defend their place in the universe with everything they had. Because in the end, humanity was not just a legend. They were real. And they had earned their place in the cosmos. As the sun rose over Earth once more, casting its warm light across the cities that had stood strong through the war, Ambassador Clara Mendez looked out across the horizon. The battle had been won, but the journey was just beginning. "We are humanity," she whispered to herself, her voice filled with pride. "And we will never be forgotten again."